A very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. I must admit, I'm running a bit slow today, okay? It's been one of those days where there's no gentle way to put it. I had to go to the dentist this morning, so I've given myself a little bit of extra time for self-nurturing and self-care this afternoon. I considered even giving myself the whole day off, but instead I thought, no, I'm feeling okay now. I think I'll do this video for you. So anyway, before we get into the video, we are going to be talking about turquoise, but I want to welcome people to the channel, whether they're newbies, whether they're returning visitors. Just a reminder that I put the timing slides into the description so you can jump from point to point in the video, because I know time is what is that word? Time is important to everybody. It's valuable. We all don't have a lot of time. So there may be parts of the video that you're not particularly interested in, or you might want to just skim. If you're anything like me, I skim. And then if I want more information, I can come back later on, and the timing chapters are there. They're going to help you to find the information that you're looking for at a later date, or if you've got the time to actually sit through it, well done, go you. In the meantime, what else have I got to mention before I jump into it? Oh yes, I just want to remind people too, please feel free to put your comments up. You know, if you've got questions or you've got personal experiences that you can add to my information, I welcome it. I'm never going to be offended. But anyway, let's jump right in for today because there is a bit to talk about. And beyond the first thing, what does turquoise look like? Well, this is what I imagine. This image here is what I always imagine turquoise to look like, because this is the stuff that is most common in Australia when we're purchasing it from a shop or whatever. But the other thing is too, a little bit of history and information about turquoise. As you'd be aware if you've watched my other videos, I do like to do a bit of a delve and a research, but it is a crystal or a stone that is perhaps one of the most historical crystals. It's been the talisman of kings and shamans and warriors. It's also associated, let's be real, with the Native Americans. I think more so, if I'm to draw upon my imagination, probably the South American ones, because we watch too many movies and we keep seeing it on there, if you're anything like me. But either way, it's considered to be a stone of protection. It's soothing to touch. It's, we're going to talk about the metaphysical properties down the track, but it's certainly, just by looking at it, it has a bit of a calming effect. So anyway, we will also talk about the mineral information, such as how you identify the genuine from the fake further on in the video. But I think what is interesting here too is that the name of turquoise is derived from the French, meaning Turkish, if I can wrap my tongue around it, Turkish stone. And this is because apparently, this is how the story goes, that the trade routes from Turkey to Europe and the mines from or in Central Asia, they actually travelled through Turkey and brought it to the French or the Venetian merchants, I think is what is the story that goes there. What else can I say about this? Just basically that turquoise has always been prized as a symbol of wisdom, nobility, and also associated with immortality. And this is, the ancient beliefs, such as the Egyptians, the Persians, the Aztecs and the Incas. That's who I was thinking of, and even the North Americans. So it's considered to be a sacred crystal across a lot of cultural demographics. And my understanding and my research too led me to the point where they've actually found turquoise beads dating back to around about 5000 BC. They were found in what we now know as Iraq, but would have been called Persia back in the day. And we do know, apparently, that Egyptians were mining turquoise in the Sinai in 3200 BC, which is pretty fascinating stuff. And I'm just going to give you a little tidbit here, which is one of the fascinating things about turquoise and why it's given this, I suppose, magical aspect, or it's viewed to have magic, is because it can actually change colour. Fascinating. So as far as sun signs and the zodiac goes, turquoise is recommended particularly for people under the sun sign of Sagittarius. Now, just to reiterate, if you're new to the channel, you probably won't have heard me say in the past, look, I see these connections to the Zodiac. Bottom line is I don't know how they actually attribute, or whoever came up with this idea, that a star sign or a sun sign is associated with a specific crystal. I have a feeling it's got to do with numerology, but it's just not something that I've explored. But either way, my personal position is, it doesn't matter what your star sign is or your sun sign, where you sit on the astrology charts. If you feel drawn to a crystal, if you feel that, upon reflection, that you would benefit from a specific crystal, and particularly if you manage to hold it in your hand and you feel drawn, you feel energy to it, then this is the crystal that you buy. And this is particularly the case with turquoise. And frankly, I don't think it matters what your star sign is. I think most of us would actually benefit from the properties that turquoise provides to people. But having said that, there is something there in regard to whether or not you should buy yourself turquoise. I would follow my own guidance on this, because there actually is stories out there that if you want to use it as a protective talisman, it needs to be gifted to you as opposed to you buying it for yourself. So from an overview perspective, most people will associate turquoise with communication and the throat chakra, which I do too, just so you know, and potentially even the divine feminine, which I do too. Okay. This business of it being a protective talisman means that it's been worn as an amulet for multiple groups over centuries. I think I covered this actually, but particularly for the Turkish warriors back in the day, for protection when they were horseback riding so that they didn't fall. But when we talk about the protective aspect of turquoise, we're actually talking about masculine energy or masculine attributes. Now remember, energy is not gender, so we can define it as masculine or feminine without offence, because this is basically the wisdom of the ages, shall we say, and it's across cultures. You know, we call it masculine and feminine in my world, but within the Asian or the Chinese folk, they call it the yin and the yang. Anyway, the feminine properties of turquoise include successful, actually, that's not the feminine, that's the masculine. Includes the successful endeavours, ambition, career success, that kind of thing, which is the leadership. That protective aspect is also, I may be repeating myself here. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes and thinking at the same time. That's a masculine quality. In fact, all of these attributes that I've got here, except for the communication, are actually the masculine attributes of turquoise. Good fortune, well, you know, being lucky and blessed in relationships would actually be the feminine aspect. But anyway, other benefits of, we'll talk about this more when we get into the attributes of the video. Excuse me as I swallow. Another interesting benefit or property is that it's supposed to be beneficial for your animals if they've been suffering from ill health. And I've got to laugh about this. I don't know where this information comes from, but protects or prevents animals from straying. So if you've got a dog that's a wanderer or of one of those breeds which is popular and stolen, apparently you put a piece in their collar. And apparently if you've got a horse that's, you know, so this obviously comes very, if I can speak, from a long, long way back, you know, back in the days when people rode horses and were reliant on them for transport. So apparently to put a little piece into your horse's bridle would make them sure-footed and obedient. Now, I just want to, this is just a very light summary because there's a lot of properties, and I think we do turquoise justice by breaking it down into the mind, body and spirit. But before we get onto that, I just want to make the point here that with the image that I've chosen, I actually am not sure if that is genuine turquoise. Potentially not, you know. You'll understand when we look at things like the buying tips and the mineral information. My dog has just gone silly. I'm going to ignore him and keep going. Okay. Where was I? Yes, you'll understand when we look at those other slides why I'm unsure about whether or not this image here is the authentic and genuine turquoise. So, from a mineral perspective, you can see here that if we want to get technical about it, just this disclaimer before I get into it, though, that I am not a geologist, I'm not trained in this field, and definitely the content that I put onto this slide is stuff that I've sourced off the internet. So, if you're a geo, you are most invited, greatly invited to give your input, or if you're a gemologist or one of those fields and you feel that my information is incorrect, I stand open to be corrected, and I also stand quite happily to have the information and content expanded upon. Now, obviously, this is not my area of forte. It's not even, to be quite honest, really my area of interest beyond the colour and whether or not the crystals are soft. And I suppose in some ways, I guess it is partly my interest as well. I like to know where the crystal has been sourced from. So when we're talking about turquoise, we're talking about a crystal that is considered to be a hydrous basic copper aluminium phosphate. Whatever that means if you're a chemist. Okay, but either way, you can pretty well say, having copper in the title, we know that it's going to be toxic. Okay, it's not going to be suitable for elixirs or anything like that, not when you drop it in the water anyway. So it's got a mineral hardness, meaning it's fairly soft. It's between 5 to 6 on the hardness grade, which I can't, is it the mineral of hardness score or scale? So 10 is the hardest. So when we look at this, we know it's not super hard. We know that it comes in a range of colours, as we see here, either bright blue or sky blue, can be pale green, blue green, turquoise blue, apple green and green grey. Now, the thing is, though, I think it's important to put in there that most of the time it actually has the little bit of webbing through it, but we'll look at some photos in a minute. What I find interesting is that it's now considered to be rarish, and this is why you see the higher prices or the inflated prices for genuine turquoise. I mean, back when I was a young'un, turquoise was as cheap as chips, but many of those mines have now become depleted. Or apparently it's too costly to actually mine the turquoise these days. So a lot of them have closed down and it's not considered viable. So it becomes rarer and rarer. Now, primarily, apparently, it's sourced in the USA, China, and South America. So that's interesting. But I must say, regardless of all of this, if I was going to be buying turquoise these days, I would be very, very cautious about buying it online. It would, really not be my preference to buy online, to be honest. I would actually want to go and see the product for myself before I spend any money on it. I'd want to hold it in my hand. I'd want to do some basic tests on it, and or at least buy from a verifiable, reputable supplier that is well known within the industry. Now, I don't know, I forgot to look on the website Mindat to see who are the verified distributors of turquoise, because quite often they'll actually name or recommend people or point them in the direction to where they can actually buy turquoise. But I forgot to look at it this time. So sorry about that. You'll have to look yourself. So the reason why I'd be very, very careful about buying online these days is because turquoise is so easily faked. There's a lot of fakes on the market. Now, I believe all of these images here, because I think I've sourced them from reputable distributors. These are all genuine and they're very interesting. I've got to say, the spiderweb turquoise is new to me, whether it's the green or the blue. Now, I know those two. You can see I put the website on there, Durango Silver. So they're reputed jewelers and they make jewelry, obviously, out of these crystals. So I doubt that they would actually be doing or using fake turquoise. And I did notice on their website as well, they're basically got a request out there that if you've got any genuine turquoise, they're interested in buying it. So to me, that makes them seem more legitimate, because being who they are and in the fields of expertise that they are, they're actually going to test that turquoise before they make jewelry out of it, because they're marketing it as the real deal. And it's very expensive, I might add. So when we talk about fake turquoise, I'm going to talk about this before I show you some images. The most common one is white howlite that has been dyed and passed off as turquoise. Chinese spider turquoise, which is I think very similar to this one here, these images here, that's also apparently quite often fake too. So the idea is to ask the questions, how are we going to tell if your piece of turquoise is genuine? You can do a fingernail test on it if you've got the natural rough stone, which basically is you just scratch the turquoise with your fingernail, and if your fingernail becomes caught in the webbing, so they say, there's a good chance that it's a genuine turquoise stone. This is if it's unpolished, okay? Now, other things to look out for is, let me check. Well, it's not just about running your fingernail along. I had to go and check. Sorry about that. Not just running your fingernail along the stone and having it get caught in that sort of bulbous webbing that we see of the crystal. It is actually to scratch a little bit harder. If you can scratch it, perhaps with a pointed pin. I mean, you really wouldn't want to be doing this on turquoise that you've spent a lot of money on, but let's say that you really had a fairly good idea that it wasn't genuine. You could do a gentle scratch, probably a little bit more so than with a fingernail. You might need something that's a little bit sharper or whatever. And either way, howlite is much softer than turquoise. So you can see if it leaves a mark. You know, you wouldn't have to do a big scratch. Colour also plays a part in identifying whether it's genuine. You'll see in a moment when I show you some false stuff that, especially when it comes to having the black lines, that becomes more difficult to fake. It's a little bit more obvious. And then finally, what's the other one? It's the acetone test. And to be quite honest, I think the acetone test, if you're a geo, please do correct me, or a gemologist on this. I think the acetone test is probably the best one to use on most crystals if you're dubious about them. If you've bought dyed howlite that's been coloured and made to look like turquoise, it's going to be damaged. Just be aware of that. You will damage the crystal if you do an acetone test on it, but if it's not real turquoise, doesn't really matter. So the idea is that you would basically just get some fingernail polish remover, put it onto a tissue or a cotton ball, and then perhaps rub at the base of the crystal if it's standing up, to check to see if it's genuine. Now, the key to knowing if it's genuine is genuine turquoise doesn't change its colour if you use acetone, and there will be no colour transfer from the crystal onto the crystal ball, onto the cotton ball or the cloth that you're wiping with. But if it's dyed howlite, the colour's going to leach onto that cotton ball. So I'll try and speed this up a little bit, okay? Because obviously I'm stumbling over my words. I'm so sorry I do this. Anyway, there is basically a fake turquoise that is called turquoise, and this is usually composed of the howlite or dyed magnesite. Then we have what is called reconstituted turquoise, which is small pieces of genuine turquoise that are ground up or added to a matrix with resin to form, you know, a block of the crystal, and it doesn't contain hardly any turquoise apparently, if any at all. And then you can get a plastic epoxy resin type imitation. Should be very easy for you to identify. Sometimes sellers have added metal apparently to give the piece a little bit of weight so it feels like it's a crystal where it's actually not. Other stones that look like turquoise, including a stone from Africa that's called African turquoise jasper. Quite often that is passed off as being turquoise. And so what I've got here is a bunch of images to help you just, you know, see what you're looking at when it comes to identifying fake stuff. So these images, just to be clear, I'm crediting the website that I sourced the photos from, which is Albion Fire and Ice Company UK. These are the samples of the fakes, all right? Not the two images on the right, but what you see here, the images on the top, they're all fake. The same with the blue one there. You can see that there's a lack of lines within that. The sphere on the bottom, I find that to be interesting. That's synthetic turquoise with brass. But I would also say, look, just be careful, even if you're buying online especially, because there are some craftsmen that actually do use genuine turquoise in small pieces like this and bond it to do things like, I can't remember what they're called, but the Tibetan shaker, what are they called? Can't remember, but I've seen them online. They make noise. If you know what it's called, let me know. But either way, they will use genuine turquoise and bond it together in small pieces like a mosaic. And it's actually extremely beautiful, very artistic way of using turquoise as well. Now, the image, though, the two with the red crosses, you can see that piece of, and I go turquoise in quotation marks, where it's been cut in the middle. I would imagine what's happened there is that somebody has done the acetone test, established that this is a piece of white howlite, and decided that for a demonstration purpose, they've just cut it in half so that you can actually see that's what dyed howlite looks like. The one up the top with the red cross, the round beads it appears to be, you can see just looking at that just doesn't look right. I mean, I would imagine that they are the plastic type or whatever that's had the black lines drawn onto it. So, when it comes to the spiritual metaphysical benefits, I really would be interested in hearing from people about their experiences, particularly this one thing. It's reputed to be influenced by the physical health of a person, which what I've read is that if a person becomes unwell and they're wearing turquoise, it will become paler. It'll lose some of that brilliance about it. Although if it is transferred to a new person, perhaps bequeathed to somebody upon passing if the owner dies, and then apparently it will actually regain the depth of its brilliant colour. I find that extremely interesting. I'm not one of those to turn around and say, "Oh, poo-poo" straight away, that that can't be true, because I'm actually aware that garnet, red garnet, particularly almandine garnet, can change colour as well, depending on the wearer. So, for instance, when I used to wear a piece of garnet that was gifted to me, when the lady who gifted it to me, she said that it was very brilliant red. It was blood red when she wore it, and she really didn't like it. Yet when I wore it, it was a brilliant burgundy type wine colour. So I do know that crystals can change colour, but I just was not aware that it happened with turquoise. But anyway, when we're talking about the metaphysical properties, as I said, it's supposed to be gifted to a person if you're going to use it as a protective talisman. But if you were given it as a talisman, you could wear it when traveling to protect you from physical harm, or you could wear it when doing your energy work to protect from negative energies. If you're the kind of person that believes in things like curses or the evil eye, it's reputed to protect you against them. It's also recommended for people that do a lot of astral traveling as part of protecting the aura and dispelling negativity during your astral travel, shall we say. If you're driving around, you could put a piece in your car to protect the vehicle when you're driving. Other benefits include purifying, clearing, balancing, and strengthening the energy fields, the aura, and the chakras. When we talk about the masculine and feminine energies, we're talking about the opposing polarities within. So it's believed to balance those. It's also said to activate and enhance your intuitive and psychic gifts, those of clairaudio and clairvoyance, for example. As an environmental energy balancer, it's supposed to clear magnetic smog, so you could put a piece by your computer. When we talk about dispelling negative energy, it's actually recommended for people that have experienced bullying, because it's about re-empowering them, building back their sense of self, I guess. It's also, when we talk about developing the psychic gifts, it's said to foster communication and connection to the higher realms and the nature kingdom. And that includes connecting with your guides and guardians, and even with animals. And if you've into the garden and the idea of nature spirits and divas and Mother Earth and Gaia, it's said to foster that connection as well. It's also believed to expand the understanding and awareness of universal workings, to induce wisdom. And the other beautiful factor that I like about this is the integration of self. This is the embracing of the shadow self to be able to transform it to light. Now, because this is a big subject when we talk about embracing the shadow, I will be doing this Sunday's yarning, and today, as I record this, it's the 21st of March, so that will be on the 24th of March. I'm going to load a video that kind of explains what embracing the shadow means. But anyway, it's said to support a person to fulfill their destiny, unify all of their aspects. I need to go back to that. Unify the self, oh gosh, what do we mean by unification? Basically walking the path in awareness that we are an earthly being, we have practical responsibilities, but we're able to look at the bigger picture. So there is that expanding of perspective. And in that way, a person's able to fulfill their destiny, find their path, stay on it, understand it, step into the personal power. And this can often include accessing past life information that might be influencing the current life. So the idea is that Turquoise will assist you in all of these processes and to be able to live with authenticity, integrity as a powerful person aligned with divine will. So it's got a lot of physical attributes as well, It's so that if you put turquoise in your workplace, then it's going to promote your leadership attributes. If you're needing to relocate, it's going to assist with relocation. If you travel regularly in regards to your work-related travel, so that might be the FIFO people that we have in Australia, they would be encouraged to wear a little piece as well. Apparently it's said to help avoid unwise investments. Right, okay. What else have we got here? It's recommended for accountants and computer operators. Well, that's because of the electromagnetic, I would say. And to help people de-stress and release anxiety. But we'll talk about the emotional aspects in a moment. What we've got here, we can see there's a whole range of physical healing attributes. Now, I've got to say, as always, when it comes to the physical health stuff, do not disengage from your current treatment plan or your doctor. You can use your crystals in conjunction with your doctor's treatment. For instance, I probably should talk about this on Sunday as well, because it will give me more time to actually go into this, why I say this. If you've got an immunity disorder, don't stop taking your tablets and rely totally on the crystals. Do what the doctor asks you to do and then just use your crystals as an added bonus and see what happens. But either way, it's supposed to support health. If you've had viral infections, it's supposed to help with nutrient and vitamin absorption. If people suffer from rheumatism, allergies and allergens, having allergic reactions, because we're talking about the throat chakra, we're talking about supporting people that have got throat conditions, bronchitis, tonsillitis, I haven't put on there, speech disorders, stammering. If people have got dysphagia, that is actually the capacity to swallow. It quite often affects the older people. And if they suffer from heartburn and reflux, if you've got any types of eye and ear problems, it will support that health. Interesting. I want your feedback on this, honest to goodness, please let us know how that goes. People with circulatory and respiratory disorders may benefit as well. It's supposed to act as, I can't think of the word, if you've got phlegm on the lungs, to help cough that up. Is that purging? I can't remember. But anyway, also said to support musculoskeletal health, and if you suffer from headaches and migraines or jet lag, exhaustion, fatigue, those kind of conditions, it's supposed to support your health there. I find some of these claims, like, if you've got food poisoning, have a piece of turquoise. I mean, I really don't know how you're supposed to use that. If why or how would you treat a stomach ailment? Each to their own. Do you rub your stomach with it? Do you hold it in your hands? Those would be the questions that actually I would have. If you've used turquoise to treat these conditions, please let me know. I think if you suffer from gout, you would probably wear it. So from an emotional and attitudinal perspective, it's supposed to help heal the emotions and balance them. This is a key trait amongst turquoise, to promote emotional self-mastery, okay? When we master the emotions, we recognize them, we don't repress them, we don't push them down, we accept them for what they are without judgment, and we manage them. This is when we've got mastery. And just to be clear here, I'm the same as anybody else working towards self-mastery. It's a life goal for all of us. We can know this stuff, but living it and practicing it requires true commitment. So it's kind of like when we're in the midst of an emotional reaction, we refrain. We don't stop until we've actually, or we don't act upon our emotions until we've managed to regain that peaceful center, where we are able to express in a calm way. And these are the benefits that turquoise offers. So if you're having a fear-based or an angry reaction, it's said to not only calm and stabilize those emotions, it's also promoting this inner peace, that is required to do that healthy communication. Because, when you speak out in anger or fear, the communication can be quite harsh. Whereas if you come from that peaceful space, even if you have been upset or hurt or angry, you're able to communicate that effectively for conflict resolution when you speak in this calm, loving and kind way. So it's said to promote love, empathy, and compassion, all these attributes, forgiveness and kindness. With this emotional reaction, though, hysteria and panic come into this, and it's said to dissolve all of those emotional states. So it's very much recommended for people with phobias. If you're the type of person that gets road rage, or you've got a mood disorder with rapid mood swings, it's believed to act as a stabilizer. You would be recommended to wear it on your person if you suffer from any of those things, and particularly recommended for travellers who've got a fear of flying as part of alleviating their fears. Now, if you are buying turquoise for these kind of things, that you're not buying it as a protective talisman. You could comfortably, if you believed in that it's got to be bought by somebody else, you could with ease and comfort buy a piece for yourself as part of being an emotional stabilizer. It's said to expand the perspective, providing clarity of thought, and it's also said to promote faithfulness and honesty, which obviously is fidelity. The leadership skills is often about the capacity to communicate effectively. This is whether it's problems or whether it is expectations, things like that. It's also said to increase popularity. What else have I got? Enhance the identification of problems and the root cause of unhappiness, and dissolve self-sabotage. Isn't that important? And expand upon creativity and romance to promote love and spontaneity. Sorry, I am looking at my transcript today for a change. So when it comes to the chakras, the bottom line is, I think everybody turns around and says, well, turquoise is all about the throat chakra. I'm going to say it's a little bit more than just the throat chakra, and the shade of the blue is going to basically reflect the chakras that it works with. If it is the turquoise blue, flat out turquoise, it's still going to be primarily throat chakra, but it's going to draw in aspects of the brow chakra and also the higher heart chakra, okay? Because the higher heart chakra is where anxiety centers. And because it's so calming and because it's loving, it is definitely associated with the heart chakra and the higher heart chakra. But I would say that the more green in it, which can be, I think, the Chinese turquoise, probably, but I could be wrong, that's going to draw more upon the heart chakra. And of course, for me, don't forget, because I work with colours, the more of the black that it's got in it, as I stumble over my words, that black webbing to me is symbolic of the fact of really grounding these qualities into our earthly behaviour. So it's not just about, we're working with a chakra, but we're actually embedding these qualities into our path, our life path as we walk it. And that's what we all want to do. We want to bring loving communication forth into the current environment. So as always, you can use turquoise in a variety of ways. Back in the day, they used to have much bigger pieces of turquoise, but of course those resources are now depleted. So I think we tend to find turquoise more as jewellery or tumble stones, the pendant type thing, which is why I put this image up here. As a healer or a metaphysician, they could use it as a pendulum if that was how they worked, which is Yeah, because it's a form of communication, as part of balancing the chakras. Items such as, obelisks or towers, if you can actually get them, even flames, you just don't see them anymore. But if you were lucky enough to have some from years gone by, you could certainly put them in your room. You could meditate with them, hold, if you've got some natural turquoise you could hold in your hand when meditating. You could do it with a polished crystal as well. If you're lucky enough to have a bit of extra turquoise and you were game enough, you could put it beside your computer at work, I guess, as part of addressing some of that electromagnetic frequencies. I'm going to say it's not suitable for elixirs because of the copper aspect, but there are ways to make elixirs which don't require you to submerge the crystal into the water, because if you do that, then the copper will leach into the water that you're going to consume. So you don't want to be making elixirs from immersed turquoise, would be my recommendation. I think it would be highly unsafe. So, as a messenger, I believe that turquoise is saying, look, it's time to learn how to speak with love, to be able to speak your truth and speak from the heart, because this is a power that when we can harness it, it transforms our lives. Now, as a messenger, turquoise is always going to translate, for me anyway, about this aspect of speaking your truth and speaking with diplomacy, tact, and sensitivity, even if the truth is unwelcome. And obviously, this is something that I apply to the services that I provide. And because life is not this one straightforward pathway of, yay, everything's roses, we get challenges along the path. And what I find is that if I can deliver with sensitivity and provide hope for the future, then people actually appreciate that honesty. Now, the thing is too, when I'm not saying I've harnessed the power of communication, because clearly I don't. You can tell when I'm doing these videos. But as I say, we're all a work in progress. But anyway, this business of mastery involves, speaking with regard and kindness. I'm going to give you an example. I'm sort of reading my notes at the same time as trying to speak here, because it's such an important topic. Okay, so I'm reminded many years ago, when we talk about translating this information into the physical aspect of life, I knew a guy many, many years ago, and he was tasked with having to lay off a workforce. It was a mining company, and they were actually cutting back. And I think at the end of the day, there was about 150 to 200 employees that had to be laid off. So you can imagine, when people are being laid off like that, we call it, they get the sack here in Australia. So it's a dirty job and somebody's got to do it, and it's usually delegated. The big knobs at the top of the food chain, they make the decision, and then they tell somebody else, that's your job, you can go out and tell the employees that they've lost their jobs. So the person that I spoke to was the bearer of bad news, and I had huge compassion for that person in those instances, because I thought, you've got family men here, you've got men that have got children, wives, all the rest of it. They're the major breadwinners, and they are going to be devastated by being laid off. And I thought, they're going to react, So the poor person that's got to sack all of these people, I thought, what a tension, what an awful position to be put into, is breaking this bad news to people and then having to be exposed to their reactions, whether it's them breaking down in tears or whether it's them getting angry and holding him personally responsible for the delivery of these bad news. But what he told me, and this is what I found interesting, is that he delivered the news to all of these people, and every single one of them was very kind to him at the end of them getting up and walking out the meeting, because every single one of them understood that it was not his decision, that he was doing his job as well, and that they actually complimented him. And one of the stories that got me was because there was actually a personality conflict between, let's say, the messenger and the receiver. They hadn't got along at all. It was a really big personality conflict, and anyway, the one that got the sack actually turned around and thanked the person that I knew for being so compassionate with the delivery of his message and for the consideration. And he understood that, it was one of those scenarios where he says, I understand, look, we've had our issues in the past, but I really appreciate the way that you've delivered this message to us. Thanks very much. It's not good news, but at least you were sensitive, stuff like that. So this is important. And I guess in a way that reflects that if you can deliver a message well, it can build bridges. You know what I mean? It can actually build a level of camaraderie. And this might be why they say that turquoise can increase popularity. So there's some food for consideration. So, when it comes to caring for the crystal, as always, we have to look at the general maintenance of the crystal to start with, from the non-metaphysical, if I can speak, metaphysical aspects, and then we actually look at the metaphysical. That's how I approach it. Okay, so the bottom line is mainstream. You've got to be careful how you handle turquoise so that you don't scratch it, particularly if it's rough. You don't want to have any chips or cracks occurring because you've been a bit rough with it. And you do have to avoid exposing it to any kind of thing that might damage the surface, more so when it's uncut and polished. Okay, now the other thing to remember is, particularly if it's uncut, in the rough form, is I got told many years ago by Geo, anything that's got a level of green in it is generally got that green because it contains copper. Now, copper is toxic. This was when I learned about it, and he said to me, if you're ever going to handle green crystals, you need to either wear gloves or you need to wash your hands before you touch your face or eat or anything like that, because there will be a copper transfer onto your hands. So that's worth bearing in mind. Of course, it's not the same when you've got your polished crystals. So yes, wear gloves or wash your hands straight afterwards. Okay, when you are cleaning it, you would be recommended to use the lukewarm water, mild soap, generally a phosphate-free soap, okay? And even if it's rough, not just polished, you can gently scrub the stone with a soft cloth, with a soft toothbrush is one of my preferred methods, to get into all the crevices. But don't be excessive. Don't apply excessive pressure on it. Don't go overboard. You only need to do what you need to do and then give it a rinse off, okay? It's very important to note with turquoise, harsh chemicals such as ammonia bleach or acidic cleaners, they're going to damage the crystal and change its colour. Now, one point I forgot to mention when I was talking about the buying tips is that often a seller is going to inject a crystal with what is called a stabiliser, such as an epoxy resin, and that's so that it retains its colour. Now, they need to disclose this, so that could be something that you ask when you go and purchase your turquoise. Because if you're buying the crystal because you want to test out these magical attributes of how it changes colour depending on the health of the wearer, or if you're planning to gift it for that reason, then if it's been injected with epoxy, it's not going to change colour, okay? So it's going to actually destroy it from the metaphysical perspective that we want. But if you're a collector and you just want to keep the colour, that's fine, okay? But you need to know so that you make an informed decision. Okay, so other factors to be aware of with turquoise is that it's sensitive to sunlight and extreme temperatures, and will also react to excessive humidity, which is really important to know if you live in Australia or the tropics. So if you have any of these environmental issues, you need to be able to store your turquoise well away from the direct sunlight. Don't put it on the windowsill, or if you've got extreme temperature fluctuations. So if you, like me, where I might put the air conditioner on, so there can be jumps in the temperature, then it's better for the turquoise to be put in a display cabinet, or if it's a jewellery item, just pop it away in a storage box. But don't forget, when you put it in the storage box, put it separate to anything that might scratch your turquoise, because it actually is quite soft, remember. Another tidbit too is it's very sensitive apparently to chemicals that are found not only in the cleaning products but also in your beauty and skincare products, and even perfumes. So if you're going to apply your perfume, you would want to do it before and let it dry well before you actually put your turquoise pendant on or your earrings, because that may actually impact on them and basically harm the crystal, okay? Same with your lotions. Take your jewellery off, okay? So I wouldn't be showering with my turquoise either. If you're looking to energize or recharge, then obviously I always look at selenite. Selenite's my preferred option. However, it would scratch turquoise. So in the instance for me, I've got the polished selenite. Polished selenite will be fine, but not the rough. And if all I had was rough, I would put a little piece of fabric between the turquoise and between the selenite. But otherwise, I've got a video up on what you can do as far as energizing and recharging goes. You might prefer to use incense or smudging, even sound clearing. It's up to you. But yeah, just be careful with sunlight. So, my friends, this has been a long video for today. And in fact, I'm sorry, I had to split it up. So, I didn't load it. I started it and I had to finish it off this morning. If you were wondering what the noise was before, when I'm like, what is my dog doing? The issue is I've actually got a lot of boxes around at the moment because I've been getting a lot of items come through in the post. And so what I've done was I put a couple of smaller boxes into the big box, and he is so explorative. So where I'm going with this is he actually fell into the box because he was being a sticky beak. But he's a very busy boy. But anyway, I'm going to say, look, thank you for being part of my journey. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week. I will expand on the Sunday yarning with the embracing the shadow aspect. There was something else. My mind is like a sieve at the moment. Look, if you've got questions, you've got time to ask a question before I do the Sunday yarning. Otherwise, I'll respond to it on the video, okay? Because there's a couple of themes I've touched on and I think I need to expand on them. Probably speaking your truth. All right, for now, though, I'm going to say love you, leave you, have a wonderful week. Blessed day. Take care. Bye-bye for now.